3,000 years ago, the most fortified city in the ancient world collapsed in a single moment. No battering rams, no siege towers, no army broke through. The walls just fell. But here's the detail that nobody taught you. They didn't fall inward, they fell outward. And that one fact buried in the ground for 3,000 years changes everything you think you know about what happened at Jericho. Most people hear the story of Jericho and picture a small desert town. Mud huts, a few guards, walls that crumble like sandcastle blocks. That picture is completely wrong. Jericho wasn't a village. It was one of the most ancient, most fortified cities on the face of the earth. Archaeologists believe it was already inhabited over 10,000 years ago, making it quite possibly the oldest continuously occupied city in human history. When the Israelites stood outside its walls, they weren't looking at a soft target. They were staring at a military engineering masterpiece. First, a massive stone embankment, a revetment wall rising up from the ground at a steep angle. Then the outer wall, mud brick, 6 feet thick, 30 feet high. Then a gap. Then the inner wall, 12 feet thick, even taller. No catapult in the ancient world could breach that system. No battering ram could generate enough force. A conventional siege could take months, even years, and the city's grain stores were stocked to outlast all of it. So when God told Joshua, "Have given you the city," Joshua had every human reason to think that was impossible. In 1930, British archaeologist named John Garstang began excavating the ruins. What he found shook him. The walls had fallen outward, down the embankment, away from the city. He documented it, published it, and the academic world largely moved on. But 60 years later, in 1990, a researcher named Dr. Bryant Wood went back through Garstang's original records. What he found was so perfectly aligned with the biblical account that it sent shockwaves through the scientific and Christian world. Point 1. The walls fell outward. The collapsed bricks were found at the base of the embankment outside the city. Basic physics tells you walls fall away from the force that hits them, which means the force came from inside. Point 2. The grain jars were full. This is the detail that stopped Wood cold. Ancient armies always looted grain first. No conquering army, no matter how disciplined, leaves full grain stores untouched. But there they were, sealed, intact, which means the city wasn't taken in a long siege. It was destroyed suddenly, and then burned exactly the way the Bible describes. Point 3. The ash. A thick layer of charred debris right where the Bible says Joshua burned the entire city to the ground. 3 independent pieces of physical evidence, all confirming the same story, all buried in the same ground. And we haven't even gotten to the most chilling part yet. If the walls fell outward, all the way around the city, there should be nothing left standing. Anywhere, total collapse. Complete destruction. Every section down, except the Bible says one section didn't fall. Go back to Joshua chapter 2. Before the march even began, 2 Israelite spies had snuck into Jericho. They were sheltered by a woman named Rahab, and before they left, they made her a promise. Hang a red cord from your window. Keep your family inside this house, and when the city falls, your household will be spared. A red cord on a wall that was supposed to come down. So what happened to that section of wall? When archaeologists mapped the full collapse pattern around Jericho, they found it. A single section of the outer wall, on the northern edge of the city that had not fallen, still standing, upright, in the middle of total and complete devastation on every side. And here's the detail that will stay with you. Historical analysis of ancient Near Eastern cities shows that lower-class residents, merchants, tradespeople, marginalized figures typically lived in houses built directly into the city wall. Rahab is described in the text as exactly that kind of person, living on the wall, on the outer perimeter. One section, still standing, exactly where she would have been. That's not coincidence. That's a signature. Now, secular archaeologists have an alternative explanation. The Jordan Valley sits directly on the Dead Sea Transform Fault, one of the most seismically active geological fault lines in the entire Middle East. Major earthquakes have leveled entire cities in this region throughout recorded history. The ground here moves. It has always moved. And under specific seismic conditions, depending on fault direction, and wave pattern walls can collapse outward rather than inward. So the argument is, earthquake, natural event, coincidental timing, no miracle required. It's a serious argument, and serious scholars make it. But here's the question that argument cannot answer. How did an army of people with zero seismological instruments predict the exact moment? They were told to march for 7 days, 7 circuits. On the 7th day, trumpets, a shout, and then the walls came down, on cue. If the mechanism was an earthquake, then what coordinated the earthquake with the march? The mechanism doesn't eliminate the miracle. It just shows us how the miracle was delivered. There is one more layer to this story, and most channels won't touch it because it gets complicated. For decades, mainstream archaeology used a dating system built around Egyptian chronology to place the destruction of Jericho at approximately 1550 BC. The biblical timeline puts the conquest closer to 1400 BC. That's a 150-year gap, and critics use that gap as their primary weapon. For a long time, that argument had real traction, until Dr. Wood looked at the pottery. The dating of ancient sites relies heavily on pottery styles. Different eras produce distinctly different ceramic patterns and firing techniques. Wood's analysis argued that the pottery found at the Jericho destruction layer had been misclassified cataloged as Late Bronze Age, when it matched Middle Bronze. Correcting that classification moves the destruction date to approximately 1400 BC, perfectly aligned with the biblical timeline. The debate is not fully settled. Scholars still argue it on both sides, but the 150-year gap that was supposed to disprove the Bible quietly got a lot smaller, and the archaeological record piece by piece kept pointing in the same direction. The walls of Jericho were supposed to be unbreakable, engineered over centuries, tested by generations, considered impossible to breach. They fell in a single moment, outward, suddenly, with ash where the city stood, and grain still sealed in the jars, and one section standing, right where she said she would be. That is not Sunday school. That is archaeology. If this video showed you something you didn't know, drop the word Jericho in the comments. I read every single one. Subscribe because every week we go deeper into the hidden history, behind the stories you thought you already knew. And the next video is already waiting for you right now.